Rise Up with Rise Growth Partners. Joe Duran and the Rise team share hard-won lessons from building top wealth management firms, showing you what it takes to create a lighthouse brand that inspires clients, attracts talent, and fuels growth.
Hi, Joe. Welcome back to Rise Up.
Hey, Jen. How are you? Good to see you.
I am great. It's good to be here with you.
Good.
We're shifting gears a little bit today and talking less about the industry and firm leadership and going all the way to the client and how they think about wealth.
Well, it's one of my favorite subjects. Honestly, as you know, I wrote a whole book on this topic called The Money Code. It's a bestseller for almost a year. And it was really on this particular subject, which is money, what creates satisfaction. And I think in our industry in particular, we're so focused on the math, we don't think about what's the purpose of the money. Yeah. And so I think this hopefully is going to be an interesting topic. I certainly loved writing this article because people are so focused on dollar amounts and thinking that the more dollars you have, the happier you're going to be. And there's some really great research that validates that the amount of dollars is not as important as other things. And we'll talk about that.
Yes, I really enjoyed reading it because then I could see myself when I was in different years and see myself thinking about always like the what's next. But let's get into the different tiers.
Well, before we do, let me just set the table a little bit. There's a couple of premises that I wanted to establish. And this came up, my daughter, who's just graduated high school, has some folks who, the parents are researchers at University of California at Irvine, and their work focuses on health, and in particular, money and health. And they had completed this incredible work that showed that the amount of absolute wealth did not link to anxiety, stress, and well-being, but where you fit in your segment of wealth absolutely did. In other words, if you're a millionaire and you hang around with people with 200,000, you're going to be healthier, feel more satisfied, and in fact be much higher levels of overall financial satisfaction, not just to your health, but your well-being, your set of anxiety, than if you're a person with 1 million. And by the way, so that's a person with 1 million who sits with people doing 250,000. You'll be happier and more satisfied than somebody with $5 million who hangs out with people with $25 million. I found that to be.
Are you the biggest house on the block or the smallest house on the block?
Yeah. So I think there's two important elements here. We often think that our clients will do more and be happier just based on their own voyage. And in fact, what their research on health and also lots of additional research has shown that, in fact, especially in America, where we use comparative economics all the time, your line of sight, the people you surround yourself with, have a huge marker on your level of satisfaction and happiness. And there are two things that matter here, I think, for advisors. Number one, understanding what's driving how people feel about their sense of accomplishment or success. And that's very much linked to their people that they're with. The second really important thing to think about is that every time you climb into a new tier, when your kids go to private school and now everybody's of a different segment, or you move to a much more expensive neighborhood and that group is a lot wealthier, or you join a country club, or you buy a private plane, there are these natural levels that we all strive for. But when you get there, you might suddenly go from being the king of your castle to the poorest guy in the neighborhood or gal. And that alone can make you feel dissatisfied. And there are two elements to that you need to consider. One, it can be a great motivator because now you want to be more successful. But it can also be a very frustrating because now you don't feel like you can be more successful. And as advisors, as planners, understanding and helping people understand that this is your life. Only climb up to the next ladder if you're comfortable being at the bottom of the food chain and climbing your way to the middle, because we want you to be happy. And it's very interesting. So as we go through the tiers, I think it's really important to frame it in that context, that we as advisors need to understand. Our clients, yes, come to us to grow their wealth, but the great advisors understand they're really there to provide a sense of real ease and peace of mind, which is not just about knowing that you can live well in retirement. It's also feeling good about where you've ended up, where your life's work has taken you. And every time you climb a tier and you now are at the bottom of the next tier, you're going to feel dissatisfied relative to where you were prior. And again, I certainly remember when my kids went to private school, or I moved to a nicer neighborhood, that feeling like, oh my God, I thought I'd done really well, but I'm really a nobody.
Yes, I'm laughing, Joe, because I think about multiple times where Tom and I had to share with our kids, you really are very fortunate. You just don't know it because of what you're surrounded by, particularly in wealthy neighborhoods.
And so some of it's motivating.
It warps your sense of reality.
Right. And some of it's motivating, but some of it gives you a sense of privilege and entitlement. And more importantly, you don't want to take away from your own accomplishments. You don't want to take away from your client's sense of this is your life. It's not Betsy from across the street. It's not the guy with a private jet. I really felt this as a concrete example when my kids, this was years ago, and I was 30 in my late 20s, when Charlotte, my oldest, was going into a school, and she got into this very nice private school in Bel Air. And everyone there is having their kids dropped off in private cars, and they have nannies picking the kids up. Me and Jen are like, barely can afford the private school tuition. And I'm like, my God, these people are like, I can't even imagine being like them. Now, again, I was in my late 20s, early 30s, so I was motivated and inspired, but it wouldn't feel very good if it was like now in my late 50s going, oh my gosh, I've scratched the surface. So your line of sight very much has an effect. There's a great book on this subject, by the way, called David and Goliath, that you are invariably more satisfied. And that's Malcolm Gladwell, who lots of people know. You will have much higher levels of satisfaction being the big fish in the small pond than the small fish in a big pond. And that's true of whether you're a student who's really brilliant and you go to Wisconsin versus if you go to Harvard. And the levels of satisfaction and future accomplishment that are true when you are better than the people around you in certain ways, so superior in certain ways. And I don't mean better in that you're a better human, you just have accomplishments other people don't, or skills that other people don't. And we should talk now again, and it's helpful now. What we did is we worked with AI to categorize. We use the broad categories that everybody knows about. We just came up with naming conventions that I think are a little better. And what typically happens at each level. And what we're going to do is talk about what do you have at the entry level, at the entry point of this wealth, and what are you feeling at the top of that wealth so that you can help if you're working with clients in that area, or if an end individual investor is listening to this, how to think about where they are.
Okay, sounds good. Let's dive into it. We'll start with tier one, or the accumulators. They're currently at under $1 million in assets. And you say at this stage, clients want breathing room, not luxury. Tell us more about what that means.
I think, look, your balance sheet is fragile, right? Like you're very you're in a risk situation. Like maybe you've got enough to survive not having your job for 3 months, but probably not for 1.5 years. You might not be saving enough for retirement. Maybe most of your net was tied up in your home. And you're in a fragile place. And so you have to be really thinking about, how do I create enough of a safety net? And this, of course, depends on your age. And all of this is dependent on where you are in age. So obviously, if you're in your 60s and you have $800,000 or $700,000, the level of choices you have goes down. But, at the entry level, maybe you have some limited liquidity, and you've got healthcare, childcare expenses. You've got a lot of costs. And often people enter this stage, they're in their they're Henrys, high earners, but not rich yet because they're spending everything, building their home, feeding their kids.
And they're hoping nothing goes wrong so that they have a big unexpected expense.
Right. And, at the top of this tier, hey, you have real equity in your home. You have emergency reserves that will keep you safe for a while. You have a consistent saving habit, and that's a big one. And then lastly, you've got your debt under control. Like that's when you've left crisis mode. And at the top, you're feeling, okay, you're certainly not feeling rich or wealthy, but you're feeling like, okay, I have breathing room, as you've said. I think that's a good term.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing here is, again, what do people want at this stage? Safety. Like they just want to know,
Right.
am I okay? And what makes me not be okay? And if you have clients in that spot, it's just breathing room. It's making sure that I can survive if something unexpected happens.
Create a little bit of a cushion.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep moving to the next tier. Tier 2 is the high net worth, the 1 to 5 million.
Yeah, and high net worth, again, I think our terminologies haven't evolved with where wealth really is, because I don't think anyone with $1 million, not anyone, but a lot of people, certainly in the big cities. And again, it's just a different level of wealth expected because your expenses are so high if you live in New York or Los Angeles. And it's impossible not to have a home and not have $1 million in net worth.
Right.
But, you could be in a more modest, I went to school in St. Louis. You can get a very different kind of home for $500,000 than you can't even buy something on the West Coast. But regardless, what you have that's at this, what we'll call high net worth, this 1 to 5 million, is you should feel security, but you don't feel secure. And again, thinking about this not in material terms, not from the context of a financial planner, but what is most typical for somebody in this segment is a sense that I know I can ride it most out, but I probably can't live the life I want, and I know I'm going to have to sacrifice. And that set of trade-offs, and this is where, again, most advisors listening to this have a huge portion of their clients in this 1 to 5 million in liquid assets, investable assets. And those people are living in a world of trade-offs, and how they make those trade-offs, how they think about, do I buy a second home? Do I send my kids to private school? Can I take as nice a vacation twice a year? Your job, this is where financial planning most shines, because there's choices at the bottom end of this tier. Obviously, choices are much harder to make than at the top end of the tier, where you have a lot more latitude. And so for us as advisors at that segment, you have these people probably have a nice home. They have an investment portfolio that's taxable. You don't need to worry too much about taxes yet, but you will at the top of the tier. And they're trying to grow their careers and their incomes to the point where they actually know that we're in good shape. And at the top of the tier, have really minimal debt, or you've funded your kids' college tuition is pretty much taken care of. You have a clear financial plan. You know what you can and can't do. Works, you take nice vacations, and you start to have the view that work is optional. That I am working because I want to, not because I have to. That's probably one of the biggest differences between being at $1.5 million and 5 million. Optionality and security becomes less important. But what you need, obviously, is as you're at the top of the level, you got to reduce your tax burdens. You got to think about, how do I make my life a little bit different? And the trip to the very high net worth is where your life really changes.
Yes, 5 to 25, certainly.
Yeah, and here is probably where you have the most possibility of somebody who should be feeling good suddenly going, why don't I feel better? And that means that somebody is sitting there, they've got $6.5 million. It's more money than they probably imagined they'd have. And again, I'm excluding somebody who inherited, because they'll just believe they were always rich. But somebody who's earned it themselves. And they're sitting there going, why don't I feel richer? Why don't I have more choices? And likely they belong to a country club where there's a lot of people with 15 million and 20 million and 50 million. And they're looking around going, boy, they drive nicer cars. They live a better life. They're taking vacations at every 4 seasons. How do they afford to spend $3,000 a night? And there's a lot of comparison envy in this tier. And that segment at the lower level, the most conflicting issue is that we as advisors often go, well, you have $6.5 million, you can do what you want. and helping them to feel comfort, security, and understand that you can be just fine if you don't spend $1 million a year. But what does happen very often at this level is they start going to a level of lifestyle that is wildly different than the one they used to have when they had $1 million in net worth. And they know that their kids are probably taken care of. They know they probably have maybe even a second home, and they hopefully are generating income, but stability of income streams so that they have options and feel good about it becomes really important. Certainly at the top of the tier, 25 million, you have a different set of concerns than somebody at 5 million. You almost certainly are really well covered. You still need to manage your expenses. And I think that's the part that maybe is unusual, because often the people who are at the 25 million, who remember having 5 million, we need to give them permission to enjoy their life more, because you get two kinds of millionaires. You get the kind who never feel like it's enough, and you get the kind that actually don't relish and enjoy it. So I would say when you're at the 5 million plus level, we start to have the really beautiful job of being able to give permission to certain clients to start enjoying their lives more. Not to the point where maybe at 6 million, they're private jetting anywhere, but we can say that, you can fly first class to Europe. And this is very age dependent, obviously, but we've certainly, Jen, you and I, seen clients that have $40 million or $30 million, but they saved their way to it, and they spoil their kids and their grandkids, and they've never gone on a cruise because it feels like too luxurious for them, right? And some of that's great because they feel really comfortable. But some of it's okay to give permission to enjoy life.
Right. And to retire, or semi-retire, or have the freedom to do additional things that they love rather than just keep accumulating.
Now, one thing I'll say at this level, security is no longer the driving issue. It's really about control. Like, do I have an estate plan? Do my kids know what to do with money? Then the happiest are not the ones who now have more money. They're the ones who have the most visibility and have control over how things work. I know I'm not going to pay taxes because I've got deferred tax strategies. I know I have the beginning of an estate transition plan. I understand and know that my family is well taken care of. There's a different level of complexity that happens. Maybe they've got 2 homes. I want to simplify my life some. So as you go from 5 to 25, they want to be invested in things that are different. They want solutions that are tax sensitive. They want things that simplify and take work away from them. They're more likely to want concierge services. And so they want somebody to coordinate with their tax prep. And so again, the need here at 5 to 25 is simplification and control.
And hopefully their advisor can address all those needs. Like, not every advisor and firm is equipped to necessarily have those types of conversations and provide those types of services to the $25 million client.
Yeah, and I don't want to spend too long on the next, but I do think the ultra affluent, the 25 to 100 million, and I again view that to be the people with over 100 million. I call that dynastic wealth. It's really completely different world. The 25 to 100, maybe 80, 90, they are different than the 25, but not wildly different. What is different here is that they have really, almost every one of these folks, multiple homes, many cars, lots of demands from everyone around them asking for money. Like, that's the one thing that they'll say is, something you don't have to deal with somebody with 2 million typically. I don't put guardrails from the people who want my money, family members that need money, kids who want me to pay for their college, not my kids, but my spouse's in-laws and my extended nephews. And so there's nuances that are really helpful. And what they really want is like, hey, this is much more existential. Like, now it's not really about the money. It's really about my life. And now that I have it, and often this happens when somebody sells a business, they suddenly have 50 million and they don't feel secure. They have a loss of identity. They're not sure what they're going to do because they've spent no time exploring who they are as individuals. And so again, once your material needs are taken care of, there's really about relevance and identity and impact and purpose. Like, what is it you want your money to do for you beyond grow and beyond take your life and overwhelm it? And the happiest people at this tier are not the richest. They're the ones who've really found purpose beyond money, because money is just fuel. All it is a way to get to the next station. Nobody ever goes on vacation to go to the gas station. But if you have the gas, you can take your RV wherever you want to go. And that's a good way to think about money. And at this stage, you have so much, you can go almost anywhere. And our job as advisors is to help these people articulate, what does it mean to me and what do I want it to mean to my family? And obviously, once you get to dynastic wealth, then it's a completely different discussion, because it's all about that. You have to have a clear vision about this is, multi-generational wealth. And again, it's not something most of the folks listening to this deal with it at all.
Right.
But they are different sets of questions and concerns that people have at every level.
So, Joe, before we go, what's a challenge that you can extend to advisors who are watching so that they can take this to their practice this week?
Well, it's one simple one. Do you treat every client the same way? Mm-hmm. Because they don't have the same concerns. They're hidden. And the second thing I'd say is, do you know what your client's hidden concern is underneath the obvious one about performance and is my financial plan capable? And I would ask that question of, hey, my clients with $12 million and my clients with $2 million, do I know what drives them that's different? Mm-hmm. And whether they are dissatisfied or satisfied with where they are financially, and helping them to get comfortable with, are we addressing the things that you really care about?
Right.
Because somebody with,
going.
And I'll give you a good example. Somebody with $4 million who's taking care of their own family might have off-balance sheet liabilities that you've never spoken about, but keeps them up at night. They might have a mother-in-law who's got dementia, or a mother who has dementia, or family members that don't know how to deal with things. They have a set of issues that are very different than somebody with $15 million. Mm-hmm. They might be similar, but the consequences and stakes are different. So I would say for advisors, having for every single client in each segment, what is their primary concern today that takes away from their satisfaction, their feeling of, am I feeling good? Am I feeling wealthy versus rich? And I would take this opportunity to take the article and say, I read this article and it led me to ask a question of you. I'm assuming you feel good with your financial plan, and I'm assuming that you feel comfortable that we've answered your questions when it comes to your money. But I am curious, do you feel satisfied? Do you feel like you're living the life you want and that this wealth is giving you what you need? And if not, what's keeping you up at night that keeps you frustrated, so that I'm aware what that is? Because I want to make sure that if you have concerns that are beyond the thing we talk about in financial planning, that I can provide resources and help to help you with that. And by the way, open the door to the non-financial spouse, because here's what you're going to hear. The financial spouse will feel a lot more satisfied and comfortable than the non-financial spouse. And if not, the non-financial spouse will still be able to articulate more clearly what the frustrations are that are not being spoken about by the financial spouse. And again, sometimes it's both financial spouses, but there's usually one person who drives the financial decisions in the house. And that person has a lot less comfort talking about what's uncomfortable than the person who's not driving the bus. That person will say, yeah, you know what? They never take vacations and feel good about it. They're always talking about cost. Or I got to fight like crazy to have her buy a new car or have him buy a new watch, which is silly. And I can tell you, at least from my household, my wife is very articulate and very comfortable, mainly because the work I do on this, to say, you know what? You're so focused on protection and feeling safe that you are not willing to enjoy life enough. That kind of articulation, and we do a lot of work here on behavioral economics. What is holding you back? What's keeping you up? And how do we address that in a way that solves for that? Because some of these things will be well within people's financial abilities today. Like literally, if you have an aging parent that you're worried about, that being put into words and saying, this is how we build it into your financial plan so you don't have to lose sleep over it. Or it might be something as silly as, my neighbors, they just have a new car every 2 years. And I don't understand. It drives me crazy. I'm driving my 20-year-old car. And maybe they just need to talk it out and articulate it. And you can say, well, would you like to have a new car? No, I just think it's irresponsible. Okay, great. You can't control that.
Right.
You can just be annoyed that you think they're irresponsible. But you're also allowed to be irresponsible if it makes you feel good. Those kinds of things. So again, I think
very different conversation, and it's a great time of year to have it, right? Middle of the year,
summertime.
Yes.
Markets have been really good. So it's and again, I think you'll find most advisors, when you have this conversation with clients, it's one of the most rich and rewarding conversations you can have, because it says that nobody listens to advice unless they feel understood. Mm-hmm. And understanding what keeps people uncomfortable, insecure, not feeling good is the most powerful thing you can have in being a good advisor, because the more they know that you know, the more they're going to trust your advice. And that's true certainly with my 3 daughters. If they don't feel understood, anything I say is meaningless. So asking the right questions, maybe questions that are different than the ones that you've asked, doing it in a context that feels right. And this would be again, one of the reasons I write these articles is to give advisors talking points that open the door to a conversation, either with their teams or with their clients. This is an easy one to talk about with clients, to say, hey, I was reading about the fact that absolute wealth is not as important as relative wealth. How do you feel compared to your peer universe?
Right.
And you might find, in fact, your clients who are doing great compared to their peer universe are much more happy, have fewer concerns, but that's good for you to know. And the ones who've stepped into a different stratosphere go from being really happy to suddenly being really unhappy. And that's an interesting topic to talk about, to remind people, you don't live their lives. They don't live your life. You concentrate on things that make you happy.
Sounds like a great conversation, especially for the summer. So I like that challenge for advisors. So get out there this summer and open up to a different conversation with your clients.
Thank you, Jen. We'll talk soon.
Okay.